Cool. Good to see you, TK. Shar, of course. Awesome. Good to see you too. And we're live on YouTube. It is 5 p.m. here in Seattle. Good. Isn't there a show about like going live in Seattle or something like that? I feel like I'm a radio guy. I'm from Seattle, Washington. Crazy. Oh, Courtney, good to see you. Joanne, good. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, for those who are tuning in on the replay or whatever, we're going to be talking about the vagus nerve and its role in pain management. If you have a condition that is giving you chronic pain, this is a very desirable video to watch. I'm going to give you some really good insight into the pain cycle. We're going to talk about something called the inflammasome, of how inflammation leads to chronic pain, and that by stimulating the vagus nerve, you can actually remove pain from your body without the drugs, which is awesome. And we're going to talk more about that. But before we go into that, I just always love to have us do something called the simultaneous squeeze, which I'm not going to spell correctly, but there we go. So that is just a horrible way to spell the simultaneous squeeze, but so let's do this. This is a quick inhale. This is going to stimulate your vagus nerve, put you in a learning specific mode. Everything that I'm feeding you, you're going to be like full retention. And then you're going to listen to the sleep audio later tonight, and you're going to just like store it so hardcore. You're going to know as much as I know about this subject by the end of the video. So ready? We're going to do big deep breath in, then an extra sip of air. You're going to hold that and squeeze it in for 5 seconds, and then you're going to slowly exhale for 5 seconds. It should give you a nice boost of acetylcholine, and it might relax you. It should change your state of mind and kind of bring you back into the present moment, because it's the best way to learn and have fun, right? It's going to kind of make you feel like you're on drugs, but in a good way, right? I promise. So here we go. In 3, 2, 1, breathe in. Sip of air at the top. And then hold and squeeze. And exhale. There you go. All right. So that always kind of, shifts the brain a little bit. So I love that. Ooh, good. Ooh, I got the warm fuzzies now. Okay, so let's timestamp this. I always love to timestamp this for those who are watching the replay. So let's get clarity here. So obviously the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. Everybody watching has one of these vagus nerves. Oh, Courtney, it made you giggle. Good. Awesome. It's a good feeling, right? So the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It runs down your left side and your right side. It's implicated in tons of features. If this is the first time you're watching a video of mine, trust me, you're going to learn a lot more about the vagus nerve if you stick around. But the vagus nerve has gained significant attention in recent years for its role in pain management. It's actually, the vagus nerve stimulation is now taking place of opioid pain management too in a lot of clinics. And for people, this is totally an asterisk here, right? As point number one, citation number one, is that for people who are trying to quit opioid pain management, they're actually now prescribing vagus nerve stimulators to people dealing with the withdrawal symptoms of opioid medication, which is, I think, huge, given in this day and age where people are getting highly addicted to these kinds of things. So VNS is, for good reason, getting a lot of attention when it comes to pain management. So anyway, the vagus nerve is an intricate network that plays a crucial role in regulating various bodily functions, including digestion, your heart rate, and the inflammation response. That's a big key piece of what we're going to be doing today. But yeah, in general, the vagus nerve's role in reducing pain is truly fascinating. So, so next bit here. So the thing that we do at the beginning of these videos, always, the simultaneous squeeze, is in essence an initial and really good go-to method for releasing acetylcholine into your body and providing an analgesic pain-relieving effect. It can do that. If you stimulate your vagus nerve properly, you can get that pain relief. But it's really temporary. So for people with like chronic, consistent inflammatory pain, trust me, I've tried this before. I tried doing an entire probably 5 hours. I had really bad, I think I ate something like I got food poisoning or something. And I had just such bad stomach pain. I was just like laying down, doing the Valsalva squeeze again and again and again and again. I'm really good at it. I can initiate the feeling. So I'm like, and the pain would go away for 20, 30 seconds, but it would start to come right back. So I was in bed every 2 minutes doing a Valsalva squeeze for 5 hours. My psoas muscles and my abdomen muscles were actually on fire because I was just doing ab crunches basically all day. So the Valsalva squeeze only goes so far. We can't become, it's not really possible to become completely dependent on it, I don't think. But it can help. Now, the Valsalva squeeze technique generally is a technique to use your diaphragm under your lungs to compress and almost hug your vagus nerve at your esophagus stomach intersection, right? And so by putting pressure on it, by bearing down, like, and then you kind of like squeeze your body down and you hold your breath in, that is going to cause your vagus nerve to release a bunch of acetylcholine. So, which brings us to the next component here, which is, what is the acetylcholine thing that's happening? So when the vagus nerve is stimulated through the Valsalva squeeze, your vagus nerve releases acetylcholine. Yeah, it's almost, Joanne, it's almost cheating, honestly. I don't trust HRV numbers if I just did a Valsalva. It kind of just, it's not how we should take the data, but if you really want those high scores, go for it. That will shoot your HRV numbers up crazy. So the release of acetylcholine is releasing a neurotransmitter with very powerful analgesic properties. This neurotransmitter acts as a temporary pain reliever, which provides immediate relief to individuals experiencing acute or chronic pain. So the Valsalva squeeze does release acetylcholine, but acetylcholine release isn't only possible with a Valsalva squeeze. There are a lot of ways to do this. I mean, even humming or even kind of hyperventilating a little bit can provide some level of relief. But you really just got to determine based on what can you do consistently, especially if it's chronic, right? So let's talk about vagal tone. So we know we have the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve there's lots of ways to kind of measure vagus nerve activity or happiness or unhappiness. It's kind of considered to be tone. Tone means, in the case of the vagus nerve, almost loudness of the vagus nerve or quietness of the vagus nerve. So high vagal tone is generally considered to be pretty good, and low vagal tone is considered to be relatively bad. Now, I'm not going to take a Zen Buddhist approach here and say, well, there's nothing that's technically good or bad in the universe. All things are how they are. I think that works in some cases, but I mean, if you've got a broken bone versus not having a broken bone, you should go to the hospital and get that fixed because that is bad, and that could lead to an infection. So high vagal tone is desirable. Low vagal tone, 100% something we want to move away from, okay? So if you can maintain higher vagal tone overall, it can act as a barrier to the initial pain signals even developing and overwhelming your brain with pain signals. So it is really helpful to have a daily practice or a daily technique or a tool. You know, there's lots of tools that you can use to stimulate your vagus nerve, to keep it kind of, to artificially boost it or to train it in some way. So beyond the Valsalva squeeze, vagal tone can refer to the activity of the vagus nerve. And basically that's, vagal tone is just the way you want to look at it. High vagal tone, less susceptibility to developing severe pain. Low vagal tone means you're more susceptible to chronic pain, the breakthrough pain, the kind of pain that you just can't touch very well. And it does work both ways, where if you have really severe pain, like let's say you get cut or you break something or you fall, you trip, you wake up and you've got a crink in your neck, you've got some irritation in your gut or whatever, or surgical pain, no matter how high of a vagal tone you have, that sympathetic system is going to kind of overwhelm your vagus nerve and decrease your tone. So not, sometimes, if you're in a car accident and you got banged up, you're going to probably want to get that IV dilaudid from the ER, okay? There was a funny movie from like the 1970s of a guy. It was a movie about this guru. I don't remember what it is. It got like Peter Sellers in it. And he claimed that he could overcome the mind-body connection. And so he said, they said, well, your appendix needs to be removed. And he says, I don't want any anesthetic gases. I don't want any pain medication. And then he started breathing and they cut into him and then they went to him and they said, how are you doing? And he said, oh my God, I'm in so much pain. Right? So there's only so far that vagus nerve stimulation can go. It's not foolproof in that way, right? But not all pain is created equal. And so let's take a look at what I think is really important, which is the connection between inflammation and pain. So if your body is in an inflammatory state, if your body is riddled with soreness, redness, swelling, just again, your body's just kind of not in a good place, then what that can typically represent is the inflammatory response. And this is why things like fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis can be so debilitating. I mean, I've actually had so many clients that came to our program, our phase 1 program, with fibromyalgia. And they're like, nothing's working. The SSRIs that the doctor's giving me are not working. The pain medication is not working. They can't hardly be touched by anybody, because anytime somebody with fibromyalgia, their skin is just so sensitive to touch. And now I've never had fibromyalgia myself. I've had other situations where I'm in chronic pain, but I can't even imagine what that's like, just to be like, I feel like I have the Midas touch of pain, where anything I touch gives me pain. So what we've discovered, or what we, especially in any kind of a scientific endeavor, because I do consider myself to be in part a scientist in exploring the vagus nerve. I don't treat this as like, I don't at all approach this as I think I know everything here. I'm always learning more about how this whole thing works. But our initial hypothesis years and years and years ago, right, when we took on our first, just so you guys know, everybody starts from the beginning, okay? Even the best today out there they always had their very first patient. They always had their very first client. And so I always, if I'm encountering a new type of condition, always get on a phone call with that person and really try to understand, what is the symptomology that you're experiencing, and could it be connected to an inflammatory response that's a consequence of impaired vagus nerve function? And if it is, then the hypothesis that we propose, we all did this like in middle school, in high school science classes. I had a biology and a chemistry and a physics class in high school. I had a pretty good school. You guys probably did have good schools back in the day too. I don't think those exist too much anymore, but we learned the scientific hypothesis. We propose a hypothesis that says that if we then stimulate the vagus nerve in an inflammatory condition, such as fibromyalgia, which even then is another hypothesis that we don't, I could say pretty categorically that fibromyalgia is an inflammatory autoimmune condition that is a result of impaired vagal tone. So the hypothesis was that if we were able to stimulate the vagus nerve, usually through the neck or through other means like the spleen, then we could reduce inflammation in the body, thereby reducing the symptomology of fibromyalgia. Now, I think in the popular culture, there is not a single high-level scientist or researcher or thinker or philosopher in the field of medicine today that considers there to be any type of a cure for an autoimmune condition. Once you develop an autoimmune condition, technically it's with you for life. So I'm going on that type of perspective that if you find a treatment that is effective, that eliminates fibromyalgia pain or chronic pain for you, it doesn't mean that you're cured. Okay? So nothing I'm saying here should be construed as I'm not claiming a cure for any of these conditions. I am claiming a logical step-by-step process that involves identifying an immune response, the root source of that immune response being poor vagal tone, and that a potential leverage point is the vagus nerve. That can make you can change the relationship between the inflammation and the pain. So when you stimulate the vagus nerve, you can, and what I've seen, and this hypothesis has bared out to be true, is that if you do stimulate the vagus nerve in a model of fibromyalgia, is that the inflammatory condition underlying the pain of fibromyalgia goes away. Very simple. Very, very simple. And I have, I might as well just post it. For those who are like, yeah, but you're just saying that, I encourage you to go to, I store testimonials from clients. You can go to our website, vegushub.com/testimonials. Not right now, but later, or just remember that URL. Go and look at the video interviews. I have a number of people who have fibromyalgia who have been like, holy mother of frankincense. This is the thing that fixed me. That this is the thing that gave me my life back. So, I mean, I do have some authority in speaking to these areas. There's empirical gained knowledge, hard-earned knowledge on this, in my experience. So let's see. So let's quickly discuss, I think, a key aspect on this journey of understanding here. So there is something in your body called the inflammasome. The inflammasome is your body's kind of underground railroad of inflammation. So if you have an infection or some kind of an injury in your body, your inflammasome starts signaling from one inflammasome to the next. The inflammasome represents these like little protein units that click into pro-inflammatory or non-inflammatory. So if you have an inflammasome that's cascaded, it's kind of like a chain reaction. You have an inflammation trigger. People can have triggers from petrochemicals, from perfumes, from plastics, from EMF, from stress, from people, from social media. There are so many things that can like stack to trigger the inflammasome. Even, for instance, if you look into the pathology, not of fibromyalgia, but of type 2 diabetes, type 2 diabetes is a consequence of the inflammasome cascading into hyperactivity in your pancreas. And that destroys the B cells, the B islet cells in your pancreas, thereby making it impossible for your body to produce insulin. Therefore, your blood sugar spikes and your body gets irradiated with glucose and sugars in your bloodstream, and that causes further tissue damage all over and tissue death. That's why you have necrosis of your feet in type 2 diabetes. Not to get too graphic, but we're gonna get into stuff sometimes. Joanne, great comment here. I've noticed a decrease in inflammation levels with VNS and reduction of anxiety, which is related to increased cortisol levels and related problems. Yeah, exactly. So high anxiety leads to high adrenaline, and then if that maintains for too long, high cortisol, that gives you hours of increased stress, which really sucks. And yes, of course, the numerous issues that come with that too. So it's really tough. But this inflammasome is tightly intertwined with your vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve has the ability, your vagus nerve does kind of act as a master regulator switch. Guys, this is why, this is why this Facebook group in particular is now verging on 25 100,000 members from all over the world. And I don't run Facebook ads. I don't even post on Instagram. This is just like literally completely organic growth. This is a very, very important subject of health. It's worth looking into. But this inflammasome, if it clicks into inflammation, it'll cause a cascade all the way to tissue damage. So in order to reverse it, you can simply stimulate your vagus nerve. You can turn off that chain reaction, that almost nuclear process that kicks off inflammation across your body, in your brain, in your body, in your organs, your joints, everywhere, in your skin. Vagus nerve is really, 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 really crucial to avoid the inflammasome response. So, all right. Next part of the talk here. So, what can we do here, right? So, what we did talk about the Valsalva Squeeze already. What can you do that's more than that? Well, vagus nerve stimulation can refer to all kinds of things. Anything that stimulates the vagus nerve, that increases vagal tone, is considered VNS. And the one piece of advice I would give you is to leave your reservations at the door about being like, oh, I want to be all natural in this. Because all natural, let's look at it like this. If you could stimulate your vagus nerve by putting a cold pack on your neck, which you can, if you take an ice cold pack and place it against your neck, and then you want to come to me and say, this is a natural way. I'm like, oh, so 10,000 years ago we had refrigeration and ice cube machines. So that's the natural thing. All humans just had access to really cold stuff all the time. No, not always. And if you were a Viking, you weren't stripping your Viking helmet off and taking your fur robes off just to go skinny dip in a Norwegian lake. That's not always common, unless you're Wim Hof. So again, leave the reservations about the natural thing at the door. There's so much that can be done that verges on, like, what does natural mean? Did I walk through a forest and find the solution? There's even things like dry brushing, which means there's a brush that you move on your arms and your legs to like kind of move the lymph. That can help increase vagal tone. Still a piece of technology as far as I'm concerned. So it all just spectrumizes through there. And then there's types of foods you can eat that contain like tryptophan that can increase your vagus nerve function. Essential oils like clove can increase vagal tone. But, cloves pretty much grow around India. So unless you are like literally in India right now and you have a clove farm and you have no machine extraction, how can you say that's a natural form of stimulating your vagus nerve, right? So, I kind of laugh at these kinds of methods. And then also you're like, sure, I might be watching you through my $1,000 or $800 cell phone right now on Facebook, a multi-billion-dollar social media network running on $1 trillion internet backbone to receive this information, and I'll probably look this up on my phone later on YouTube. But I'm going to stick to the natural stuff. Yeah, I'm sticking to the natural stuff. I'm like, the signal that how you're receiving me is flying through the air to spaceship, like to satellites on the planet floating around in space. None of this is natural. We're way past the whole natural thing at this point in time. So making that, again, that jump through that hoop, we can then say, I recommend going full hog on this. If you want to get your vagus nerve fixed, do anything possible. And nothing that is a VNS stimulator can really do that much harm. Yeah, Joanne, you love dry brushing. That's awesome. I've got clients who do that. They love it. It's fantastic. It does feel good. Massage is good. There's lots of things that can, move your lymph around. But I would say that look, if somebody came to me and they're like, I'm having extreme fibromyalgia and I have this whole tool basket of tools and toys and tech that can make a tangible difference, I'm not going to hesitate to recommend them at all. I would be like, oh, well, if you go to your backyard and you get your rosemary bush and you rub them together and you mix it with mugwort, then you'll have the natural solution. No. VNS, too, by the way, is an FDA-approved treatment for migraine, like severe chronic migraine, for major depressive disorder, right? Suicidal ideation, epilepsy, right? Yeah. So, and those are to the degree of electrically stimulating the vagus nerve with an implanted device, a surgical implantation, a treatment that costs $16,000. If you were a neurologist and you had a client come to you and they were having 5, 6, 7 full body seizures every single day, where would the hang up be on the whole natural thing? No, you would be like, you need help. First, they would do drugs, and then they would do an implant. And the implants usually just fix the situation 100%. Like, I don't even know. Again, even if you have a patient with Crohn's disease and rheumatoid arthritis, and you do an implant, and they are completely free of those conditions, not even then does the neurologist say that they're cured, which is crazy. They're free from all symptoms of those autoimmune conditions. That still doesn't count as a cure. That you can't even go that far to say that you've cured an autoimmune condition. It's something that you manage for life. Because yeah, if stress increases, if something really bad happens, you are at risk of that flaring up again, right? You can only go into remission as long as you maintain a good, healthy vagus nerve system. So, gosh, a flare-up with an autoimmune condition, I would want to have anything at my disposal all around me ready to go. As soon as I notice the initial thing, I'm like, for me, ultrasound stimulation right to my vagus nerve instantly. I'm not waiting around for my clove to boil in the pot. I'm not waiting for that. It's just on some level, and I don't want to get too nasty here, but somebody in the group, in the Facebook group a couple weeks ago was like, I'm obviously doing a little bit of mind reading here, which I don't believe, but she was almost like, is there any like non-device way to stimulate your vagus nerve? And the way she was asking was almost like, if you did decide to go that route, oh, you have a debilitating autoimmune condition where you can't leave the house and you're bedbound and your life is insanely, horrifically bad. So in the questioning and framing it that way, there's a subtext there to say that you made a poor choice, that you're unworthy in some way by reaching out for a device. There are tons of good, safe, effective devices that come from a range of costs that I believe anybody can afford to find some kind of a device that can tangibly stimulate your vagus nerve in an emergency situation. And to ask that question, is there any non-technology way to stimulate it? It's like, why are you wiping off the slate of all those options? It's just ridiculous. And it also does subtextually speak to a ton of people that did go that route because they were in a situation where they needed to. They're not less of a person because they did that. It doesn't make you a bad person because you're using a device. You're not even hearing me if you're on a freaking phone, for Christ's sakes. You're using technology already. We're past that, okay? So I hate seeing that question. Like, if you ever get the inclination to be like, it's all just devices. It's like, no, it's not all just devices. I've never taken the stance that it's only devices. Ever. Not once. I recommend all kinds of things, right? But technology is here to stay, all right? So anyway, that's that. That's my thoughts on that. But so in conclusion, When it comes to pain management and the role of the vagus nerve, I think what we've discovered today is that the vagus nerve plays a very interesting role in the management of the anesthesia and the analgesic effects of vagus nerve stimulation. When you stimulate the vagus nerve, it releases acetylcholine, which can have an immediate effect on inflammation, but can also have a long-term effect in decreasing the inflammasome responsiveness. So that is why VNS is really taking the field by storm, right? Yeah, I mean, exactly, Joanne. Love your VNS device. Once you try it, you're going to love it. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we wish we would have had 20 years ago. Waiting around for using it is just a bad idea. Just a bad idea. We know that the Valsalva Squeeze is a great way to do that. Increasing your vagal tone on average on a consistent daily systematic basis can maintain high vagal tone and mitigate the chances of developing a chronic pain cascade. So investing in your vagus nerve, even on days when you're not in pain, can mean that you don't have painful days in the future. Okay? It's compounding interest. It's understanding that the results I have today, either good, medium, or bad, are not the result of what I did yesterday. Oftentimes, the results of your health right now could be the result of a choice that you made 12 months ago. So if that were really true, think about that. If how I feel today is a result of one activity I did on August 27th of 2022, how would that change my relationship to what I do today? For me, when I think like that, it fundamentally shifts how I approach my health. And in large part, this is actually an established thing. Who here has ever broken up with someone? If you had a year-long flourishing romantic engagement with a partner, you broke up, and it was like, here and gone tomorrow. They're just out of your life. And then you look at the watch, you look at the date, and it's like exactly 3 months later. Like to the month, it's 3 months later. And they just pop into your head. There are cycles like this. Then you look, oh, okay, well, should I text them? Should I call them? No, that would be a bad idea. So you don't, right? And then you forget about them. And then 6 months later, to the day, they suddenly pop into your head. You probably pop into their head too, exactly on the same day. There's a lot more to these underlying cycles of the planets, cycles of the weather, cycles of psychology, cycles of your body, the internal networks of cells, your DNA. There are epigenetic cycles that are 14 generations of, right? Like, what if you were the result? What if your health right now was the result of the Irish potato famine from 300 years ago? And you're treating it as like, well, I guess I did eat a peach yesterday that was a little bit underripe. Maybe that's why I'm feeling so bad. We don't know all the cycles. But I absolutely do believe that there's a lot of times where you could say how you feel today literally is a result. It's like, how do they calculate your credit score? Your credit score is based off of multiple components. How much credit you're utilizing, how many payments you're making towards your credit card. And it's like a 35%, 35%, 10%, 5% kind of breakdown. So probably 35% of you today, how you feel today, good, bad, or ugly, is the result of what you did and what you ate and what you thought and what you did for your vagus nerve 12 months ago to the day. So if that is what's happening, then that gives you freedom to say, okay, well, if in a year from now, I know in a year from now, I want to be feeding into that good stuff, vagus nerve stimulation, 100% should be incorporated immediately. Because depending on how absolutely messed up your system is, it could take you, again, I always see things in like 3 to 6 to 9 to 12-month cycles. And your momentum, like, look, people can sign up with in my phase 1 program, which, by the way, I love you guys. We've had the whole next week, I've got 10-minute calls all throughout the week. So I look forward to talking to a lot of you. And that was all just from one video last week where I was like, all right, guys, here's the link. If you want to schedule it, get on a 10-minute call. It's a free game plan call, and we'll look at the actual real situation. And I want to get a better sense. Can I give you an accurate impression of how long this is really going to take? Like, I do want to know, has this been a 15-year problem for you, or has this been a 2-year problem for you? These things do count. How systematic, how consistent have you been? A lot of people go like, my diet, it's been okay. I definitely haven't done anything to stimulate my vagus nerve. This is the first time I've ever heard of it. I don't exercise. My neck is a big problem, right? So these are all factors that go into the vagus nerve, into the health of the vagus nerve. So yeah, Shar, exactly. Shar is a client. So 4 months ago, prior to joining our program, prior to implementing all the stuff we do, all the magical things we do in the phase 1 program, her health was poor. Technically, it was poor. And today, thanks to VNS, she has a completely new life. Awesome. And it's true. And I've seen, again, my coaching, I see my clients face to face consistently. So I'm not just selling a device and getting your testimony after 2 weeks. Wow. Again, a lot of these devices, honeymoon period comes into play, right? I look at people from how are we doing in 4 months, 6 months, 12 months from now? I've got clients from 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, who are like, my life is still on the up and up. I've got my best days ahead of me yet because of what we do with the vagus nerve. So there's a lot of factors to consider here. But inflammation, it's absolutely factored in. What did you do 12 months ago? What did you do 6 months ago? Did you hum, speak, socialize, eat well, do something to stimulate your vagus nerve? Did you exercise? Did you go walk? Did you get some sun? Did you read a book? Did you think good thoughts? Did you review your day? Did you sleep good that night? These things compound. It's just a fact. It's 100% a fact. So yeah, just like for this, right? We've got 6 people watching me. I think we've had at most 8, 9 people come and go through this video. I've been only doing these lives for probably 2.5 months on an every single day basis. And if I continue to do this, these videos will have 20 people watching, 30 people watching, who knows? I have no goals with this. I just want to show up and provide value. But if you show up consistently for your vagus nerve, it will give back a lot. So I do encourage you to find some way to make it a habit. Make your vagus nerve health make your immune system something that you show up for. Definitely. So yeah, that will wrap it up in terms of the main nature of today's talk. For pain management, absolutely VNS is like insanely valuable. Should be implemented. It's a well-established fact. And the last thing I'll say is nothing that I'm saying here is woo-woo, magical, guru crystal shit, right? I'm not talking about quartz crystal or incense or anything like that. I got nothing against people who do that kind of stuff. I'm talking about my background is a hardcore discipline of clinical neuroscience with real doctors, PhDs, neuroscientists, not that kind of shit. Right? Not magical crystal stuff. Okay? Not woo-woo things. We're not tracking the solar system or if Mercury is in retrograde to be able to provide some solutions for people, right? So anyway, cool. Just hardcore science. Yeah, and a little bit of intuition and love and care. That's it. Joanne, awesome. You have a good rest of your Sunday. Thanks so much for joining. Awesome. All right, so that will wrap it up. I'm going to wrap it up on YouTube as well. So thanks on YouTubes. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And if you guys have any questions, of course, please